Good day to all my students. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. And we are here again with another recorded pre-lab discussion. And this time around, we will be talking about the skeletal system. So, the exercises 11 to 15 will be part of your midterms. And I decided to record the discussion so that you can have the ability to go through each video as many times as you want so that you can be reviewed and you can jot down notes and also make sure that you're able to grasp the information needed for the sake of the midterms exam. Okay? So each video will be short, but there will be around 5 videos. So make sure that you are able to watch through all of them. For today's discussion, we will be talking about the skeletal system. And let's start. So the skeletal system is actually composed of bones and ligaments. In simpler terms, we call them the skeleton. Okay? And the skeletal system or the skeleton has different functions. The first is for support. Of course, as you can see in the picture, it is the bones or the skeleton that provides the framework for the entire body, giving it structure and form. Imagine if we do not have a skeleton inside of us, the body will be so flimsy, it will be so sluggish that we won't be able to resist gravity. And without the skeleton, we will be moving like worms, just crawling through the ground. So because we have a skeleton inside of us, a scaffolding of some sort, we are able to become upright, walk, run, jump, and do many other movements. Next function is for protection. So it protects the organs that it surrounds, just like how the skull protects the brain, how the rib cage protects the heart and the lungs, and the vertebra protects the spinal cord. Next function is for movement. So the reason why we are able to walk, to run, to jump, and to do many other movements is because these bones are being moved by muscle contraction. Okay? So it's muscle contraction which allows the bones to move. Next is for storage. So there are many minerals in the blood which also get stored in our bones, such as calcium and phosphate. And the last important function is for blood cell production. And we know that our hematopoietic cells are found in the bone marrow, which is deposited in our spongy bone or in our cancellous bone. Okay? In order to continue, I would like to introduce to you the different types of bones that will be found all throughout the body. And there are 5 major classifications. The first is flat bones. Flat bones, because they are flat, offer a large surface area for protection and for muscle attachment. And where can we find our flat bones? That includes your cranial bones or the skull, your scapula or shoulder blade, the sternum, which is the chest bone, and the ribs. For long bones, they are longer than they are wide, and their main function is to facilitate movement. We will see them in our humerus, our forearm, which contains your radius and your ulna, on your thigh containing the femur, on your shin containing the tibia and fibula, and of course our hands, which has the phalanges. Next are the short bones, which is as long as they are wide. So equal yung length and width nila. So where can you find your short bones? You can find them in your carpals and in your tarsals. Fourth is irregular bones, and we call them irregular because they are very complex in shape and they do not fit in the other classifications, no? Kaya sila napupunta sa irregular. And lastly, sesamoid bones, which are embedded in our tendons. And usually there's only one example of that, and that is the patella or our kneecap. Now, there is a general structure of the bone or a general appearance of bone. And this is what it looks like. So here, we will see, I'll start with the articular cartilage. So the blue part here is the articular cartilage. And the purpose of that is to cover the head of the bone to prevent friction when it connects to another bone. Because usually, this part is called the head. Sorry, this part is called the head, and it is connected to another bone. So in order for the bone to not be scratching each other or to prevent friction, then the articular cartilage is there to protect each bone from injury or damage. Okay? Next is the compact bone, which is the darker colored outline here. The compact bone is the harder outer shell of the bone organ. And in contrary, we have the spongy bone, which is the lighter colored part here. Okay? The spongy bone naman is found in the inner portions of the bone, and they are identified by the trabeculations, the trabeculae, and the open spaces. Next is we have the periosteum. Peri meaning outside, osteum meaning bone. It is the outer protective layer of the bone. Periosteum, outer protective layer of the bone. And of course, we have an inner layer called endosteum. Okay? That endosteum is the innermost layer lining the inside of the bone. Sorry. I'd also like to introduce to you the words epiphysis, metaphysis, and diaphysis. When we say epiphysis, those are the head of the long bones, usually head and neck. No? Metaphysis is located between the epiphysis and the diaphysis. And usually, it is in the metaphysis that growth of the long bones happen. Kasi nandyan yung mitotically active cells. So because they are mitotically active, they continually divide, producing an overpopulation of cells which eventually become ossified, no? So humahaba yung long bones natin sa ating thigh, sa ating shin, sa ating forearm and arm because of the mitotically active cells found in your metaphysis. And we also have the diaphysis here, which is the shaft or the body of the bone, and it contains the marrow. Okay? Another important word here is the epiphyseal line. So, what's the function of the epiphyseal line? It is a layer of cartilage that actively divides to add length to the bone and is eventually ossified. When we say ossified, they eventually solidify or become bone. So, as mentioned a while ago, the metaphysis is where the growth of the long bones happen. And what specific part of the metaphysis? The epiphyseal line. This is where the actively dividing cells are located. I'd also like to introduce to you some terms that you need to get yourself familiar with, especially for the sake of the skeletal system discussion. Do you have to memorize this? Unfortunately, I have to say yes. And there are more terms written down on your lab manual, specifically table 11-2 or page 116. So later on, you will see structures of the bones or parts of the bones with this marking. So in order for you to remember or understand what those markings mean, you have to memorize them or at least get a good understanding of those things. Okay? So let's start with the axial skeleton. So the axial skeleton is composed of 80 bones. And where do we find the axial skeleton? It usually forms the central axis of our body. So that includes the skull, the vertebral column, the thoracic cage, and yeah, that's it. The skull, vertebral column, and the rib cage or the thoracic cage. On the other hand, we also have what we call the appendicular skeleton. Appendix, no? Appendages, yan. So the appendicular skeleton is composed naman of 126 bones, and they form the appendages or the extremities. What do we mean by appendages or extremities? That includes your arms, your legs, the pelvis or the hip bone, and also our shoulders. So arms, legs, our pelvis, and our shoulders. So that's it for the overview of the skeletal system. Hopefully, you'll be able to memorize table 11-2 because it will be needed later on for the rest of our discussion. Please do watch the other videos and thank you.